everybody. We have Pranav with us. Pranav is a seasoned player in property space and working on a very niche area. See, property buying is one of the most important decisions of our life, right? And the amount of investment which an average person does in this transaction is, I think it's one of the largest which he or she will ever do in their lives. And but the challenge for everybody is there are a lot of technicalities associated with property purchase in terms of legalities, in terms of the whole process, which sometimes I think it feels overwhelming. So people or experts in this area, according to me, who are trying to solve this puzzle, I think they go a long way in assisting us in realizing our dream of owning a home or owning a property for that matter. So Pranav plays a very crucial role there. Pranav is building a company called Propcop. I think they are one of the few guys who I know who focuses on the legality aspect as a platform in properties. And so by today's session, we would try to learn what has been his experience, what are some of the mistakes people he saw who have done while trying to buy properties. And we will try to build a sort of a blueprint of mistakes which we should not do. Now, I am not saying we all know that certain mistakes we will be doing, but at least is there a possibility of building a blueprint where we can tap in to see मैंने सही किया कि गलत किया. So without further ado, welcome Pranav and share your insights.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is actually a very interesting topic and a topic very close to my heart. As you suggested, at Propcop, what we are trying to do is that we want people to be able to buy and own a property safely. And there are multitude of things that happens. And if we look at what are the common mistakes or common patterns that we see that people have followed, and as a result of which they may have become a victim of a property fraud, or they have ended up with something which is not what they paid for. So there are three types of mistakes primarily. One is where the buyer or the property buyer is trying to save money. So while they are stretching themselves thin on paying the seller what he wants, they will cut corners by skimping on the fees that they will pay to the lawyer, by haggling with the broker on his brokerage, by denying the advocate the proper due diligence by saying that I don't want to spend money for a public notice. Now, these three things is something that I've seen as one of the most common thing, especially in India. So this kind of behavior you generally do not see outside. The normal process of buying, say in the West, and you will know a lot because of your work, is more structured and driven by the processes and not by the buyer. In India, still the buyer has a lot of leeway in how does he get the due diligence is done. This is one part. The second part is where they are cutting corners on because of time, saving time. So they would give a notice, but say, oh, 5 दिन में कर दो, 15 days notice नहीं देना. Or वो बंदा बोलता है seller के I don't have this document handy. उसको आने में 15 दिन लग जाएगा, आप इसके बिना चला लो. And then these guys would agree. The third most important thing that I have seen is that people are not aware. They do not take the efforts to protect themselves. They realize they do not use healthy skepticism. They take people on their face values.
No. I think there's another thing, Pranav, which I have realized it over being in the space for such a long time. Ki, a middle class sometimes feel intimidated by lawyers, and the sheer transaction is so nerve wracking. I can understand because भाई normally वो इतना बड़ा amount वो किसी purchase के लिए spend नहीं करता, right? Because he or she never does it. उसके back of the mind में already pressure है. But the problem क्या है कि I don't think there are realistic blueprints available जिसको वो tap कर सके. तो वो इससे पूछेगा, उससे पूछेगा, आसपास से, जो basically अंधों में काना राजा types. So they themselves do not know much and they will advise. And we don't go to the right expert जिसका because of our inherent biases, right?
No, but there are two things here. What you're saying is very true, but a part of the reason why this has happened is also that there is intense competition among the advocates also.
Okay.
And so a lot of times they feed into your fear.
Yes.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of a thing, where the advocate will show you all the different risks so much that you are taken aback, you were probably very skeptical, and then either you let go of that person or you completely succumb.
Correct.
Sir, आपको ही सब पता है, मुझे कुछ नहीं पता.
Correct.
Either ways, and this is true now for everything. You have to look out for your own interests, because the professionals have only 24 hours and they want to keep increasing their income. They are going to fit more and more work in that 24 hours.
Correct.
And therefore, because, and on the other hand, the professionals also cannot be blamed, because somebody who is giving a higher value, who is doing a title search, for example, I will tell you something. When I do a buy and sell of property, my lawyer takes 60 to 70,000 rupees as a title clearance plus documentation. The same thing, one of my brokers tell me, sir, मैं आपको 15,000 में करा दूंगा. How does that work? Right? The reason, so if the customer, we are not willing to pay the fees, you get pay peanuts, you will get monkeys.
Correct.
It all comes to that.
Correct.
So I think this is very important, that people who are extremely good in their own fields, when it comes to this legal thing, succumb with folded hands to whoever they come across first. That is something that needs to be stopped. And to another thing that I think is basic understanding of a legal structure. You know, when I did my LLB, one of the first things they taught us was that ignorance of law is not a valid excuse. Right? For any citizen. Therefore, a certain level of law knowledge is something that needs to be kept.
Okay. So the way I have so many examples which I can think of my head. To start building a blueprint, what are some of the mistakes which you have seen, which people do, and that lands them in trouble when it comes to this key decision?
So I will give you one example in a different way. One of the largest housing finance companies in the country faced a property fraud.
Okay.
What happened was, a person to whom they had lent money, the borrower sold the property without the knowledge of the housing finance company. Right? So these are two people involved, not two parties. There is a third party, the party who bought it. Correct. Who's an individual. That person bought a property that was already mortgaged and the loan was taken from that housing finance company. And then you have such a situation. So what would that person have done? The person should have gone to a more knowledgeable advocate who would have also checked for bank loans existing on that property. And there are ways of doing it. It's not impossible.
I thought MOE takes care of that, right? Because MOE is a registered document, right? Is it when we take out the EC, will it not reflect?
So there are different practices. There are some who do registered MOE. There are some who don't even do that.
Okay.
There are some who do a fully registered stamp duty paying document. Plus the kind of sub-registered search that you do, it will depend upon, are you doing book 1 search, book 2 search, or book 3 search.
Okay.
So those are, and there are different practices in different states on that. And therefore, since you will not know,
correct,
it is imperative that you get a right advocate.
Correct. I think that itself is a huge, what shall I say, use case for $1 billion startup in the country like ours. Assortment of lawyers. अगर certified lawyers का assortment कोई कर दे इस country में, I think it's a huge use case with customer reviews, if that's ever possible.
No, so there is this risk. There are people who are trying to do it. There are startups who have listed, but ranking them or recommending them is very tricky.
Okay.
Why? Because if an advocate is offended by your dating,
correct,
and decides to take you to court, for him it is a place that he goes daily.
Correct. That's where I'm saying, no, it's a very double-edged sword it is. So
it is something that is brewing in my mind. We will speak about this offline.
Okay.
Some of the time.
Okay. So this was a classic case where I think, but how, so you're saying in this case, we could have avoided the situation had we taken a proper expertise advice and gone ahead and not cut corners there, right?
Right.
That would have saved. What else?
So I think something that I should have started with, what I would like to mention here right now. In India, we work on the presumptive title regime.
Okay.
Which means if you want 100% guaranteed title of any property, then the only way to do it is if the Supreme Court of India in a judgment tells you that this property belongs to this person.
Seriously?
Yes.
That
is the only way of 100% assurance. There are ways of getting 98%, 99%. Most of us work on the 98, 99%. But 100%, this is the only way, right? So this is one thing. And the other thing is, because of regional complications, for example, if you take South Bombay district, there are land identification numbers that are not used anywhere else in the country.
Oh.
So if you are in Worli or Prabhadevi or say Nariman Point area, the property there will have references like Colonel Lawton's survey number. पूरी इंडिया में और कहीं नहीं है.
Amazing. Yeah.
So those, and that is what makes the advocates and the legal professional advice so important. That is why your broker becomes important. And that is why, in order to make sure that these two are giving you the right service, your healthy skepticism and a questioning attitude to them also is important.
I think this is where we should never hesitate to ask questions. I mean, that's what I felt.
No, you are paying money.
Yeah. So I don't see a reason why we should feel bad with, or is there a stupid question so as to say which should not be asked. I think as human beings, I have my own experience. I can tell you that whenever there is a hunch and I have gone ahead and suppressed it by not asking or by feeling societal pressure or feeling that, oh, what will people think if I ask? Will they think I'm a foolish person? I don't even know that types ka. I think more often than not, I have landed myself in trouble. So agar aapko, I think if there is a hunch and there is a doubt, I think, and if you are paying the person, he's a professional, is I think obliged to answer and solve your queries, and that's what makes him and her professional, right? The whole terminology
Absolutely.
means that, right? So I think it's a very very interesting point which you brought up. We have to ask questions and we should not feel shy about asking questions. Lafda hai,
Absolutely.
problem hai, we should ask.
Hey, Suno, think about it this way. The number of people who are now going to doctors and questioning their diagnosis based on their Google search, or
Correct.
asking whether the treatment that their doctor is suggesting should be modified because their Google search has yielded this result.
Correct.
If you are able to question a professional who is going to deal with your health and life,
Correct.
why can't you ask a question to the advocate?
Yes, that's a very valid point. Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important that we have to ask questions, and nothing wrong in asking questions.
So I will give you another example. Again, coming back, bringing this point in from the point of view of a housing finance company. So we found that a housing finance company had given a surface notice about a particular property. And when we matched it with our database, we found that there was already a notice on that particular property. And it was a very interesting case. The third party, even in this case, the borrower, the housing finance company, and the buyer. Now, what has happened? The buyer, so the case went around like this. In April of a year, the housing finance company gave out a demand notice. In the previous December, there was a public notice by a new buyer who is not the borrower, saying that I have already bought this property, and if somebody has any claim on it, please let me know. Generally, public notice is given pre-facto. This was a post-facto thing. The transaction between the borrower and the new buyer had happened in August of the previous year.
Okay.
December में उसको पता चला कि अरे यार, I think I have made a mistake by buying this property. There is already an existing lien mortgage on this property. So now how do I protect myself in the court of law and consider myself to be a bona fide buyer? So he had to give a post facto thing. Whether the court will accept it is a different question altogether. But here, so what has happened is, in order to save time and also save money, what that person has done is he did not do the due diligence ka ek aspect, which is title clearance notice. Now what is going to happen is the housing finance company is not going to give up. They have a previous charge.
Correct.
So when it goes to the court of law, the housing finance company will be able to claim that this new buyer is already hand in glove with the borrower. And it is a scheme to defraud the housing finance company.
Correct.
If the person is genuine, he really doesn't know, but has cut corners. Now he is landed in trouble. So 75 lakh rupees ka flat. And this is what happens.
I mean, I think the more I'm listening to your conversation, I think certain things which we knew and we have heard, it is being more cemented कि बस इसमें आप गलती नहीं कर सकते. इसकी गलती I think becomes too much heavy and the repercussions are so much कि so I mean it is crazy.